Hi everyone, welcome to episode 3 of Your Health and Your Wealth, live from my living room. It's great to have you with me. Ahead on the program, we're going to be taking a look at superannuation, the early access to your super. The first phase ends in a few days. So what do you need to know about it? And what do you actually know about superannuation? Hopefully we'll be talking about that later. But first, let's check in on your health. And a new CSIRO study has found that 36% of Australians felt that their diet worsened during COVID-19, while 2 in 5 of us put on extra weight. So I thought this might be a good time to talk about nutrition, and more specifically, what are the diets that are out there? So for more, I am joined by accredited nutritionist and dietitian Joel Feren. Joel, hopefully you've got me there. How are you going, Joel? We might just wait for 1 second while we get Joel on screen. Joel, have I got you there?
I'm so sorry. I dropped out right at that pivotal moment. So I missed your little intro.
But we've got you there now. So that's the most important part. Joel, appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me on.
So let's talk about the basics of nutrition, right? What are they?
Yeah, look, I think it would almost mirror what your grandmother would say. Eat mostly whole foods, reduce some of those what dietitians call your non-core foods. So traditionally they're called junk foods. I try not to call them junk foods. I think they're the sometimes foods. So we can still have those foods in our diet, but maybe just have them less often and have less of them. So I think the foods that we need to be focusing more on are things like your fruits, your vegetables, whole grains, your lean proteins, as well as your dairy. So they're really the fundamentals of any diet.
Joel, obviously not obviously, but I think a lot of people just want to be told, this is what you should eat to be healthy, or this is what you should eat to put on muscle, or this is what you should eat to lose weight, right? But people react differently to different foods, don't they?
Yeah, look, absolutely. We know that some people have allergies and intolerances, and any type of diet, it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. We all have different food preferences. We all come from different backgrounds. We all eat differently to some extent. So I think, just on what I said before is trying to focus more on those whole foods, eating more fruits, vegetables, trying to incorporate more colors into your diet. And certainly if you notice that you don't react well to certain foods, well, it might not necessarily mean that you need to eliminate that whole food group, but perhaps restricting some of those problematic foods in your diet. But yes, I totally agree. We don't need a one-size-fits-all approach. And even when people come to see me, I'm certainly not prescriptive. We don't necessarily need a one-size-fits-all approach. We're all wired slightly differently.
Joel, there are so many different diet types or styles out there, right? Can we maybe go through some of the ones that are on trend or the ones that seem to be getting a lot of attention? And one that I'm hearing a lot of lately are plant-based diets. What's your take on them?
Yeah, look, I'm a big lover of plant-based diets. Not that you necessarily need to eschew all meat foods or foods that are derived from animals. We can still incorporate meat, chicken, dairy in our diet. I think what we need to do is be more plant focused. So incorporate more of these plant foods. I've already touched on fruits, vegetables, whole grains, as well as legumes. And we know that they're underutilized in the Australian diet. And people who generally eat more of these plant-based foods are going to have better gut health. Their digestive system is going to be working. We're probably going to go to the toilet more often than those people who don't eat enough of those foods. And we're generally going to be healthier. We're going to reduce our risk of things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and certain types of cancers. So if you can incorporate more plant-based foods in your diet, I certainly think you're going to hold yourself in good stead.
Joel, there are so many others out there, right? So you've got keto, you've got CSIRO, you've got Atkins. I mean, they're just some of them. What are the ones that you've looked into? What are they? And what are the pros and cons?
Yeah, look, Ricardo, I don't know if your viewers can see my receding hairline and my greys. I'd like to blame it on my daughter, but I think I'll blame it on some of these diet trends. They really, they're a real bugbear of mine. And, I think if we look at keto and Atkins, they're almost one and the same. So advocates for those types of diets suggest that we should be avoiding all forms of carbohydrate. And when we do so, our bodies will turn to fat as its main energy source. And it all sounds great in theory, but eliminating carbohydrate-rich foods eliminates certain types of nutrients, eliminates also lots of dietary fiber. And people who follow these rigid, restrictive regimes for a period of time can suffer things like fatigue, bad breath, even poor sleeping habits. So I certainly wouldn't encourage people to switch to a high fat, or at least a very high fat, low carbohydrate diet. I think we just need to get the balance right. Certainly another type of diet that's hit my radar is the CSIRO diet. And that one's pretty sound, to be honest. We know that generally having a higher protein intake can help manage our hunger throughout the day. But what the CSIRO diet also encourages is more of a focus on these low GI carbs. So GI, or glycemic index, refers to how quickly a carbohydrate-rich food will be broken down into energy in our bodies. So when it's a low GI, it's going to sustain us longer. So low GI foods are things like legumes, fruits, some of your starchy vegetables as well. So it's going to better sustain us and keep our guts nice and healthy as well.
Yeah, what about gut health? I mean, that's something we've been talking a lot about lately too. How do we look after our guts?
Yeah, I think we've got to look at the bigger picture. And we can't just focus on single foods. We've got to look at the diet on the whole. And certainly we know the foods that are going to be really positive for our guts are those that are rich in fiber. So nuts, seeds, whole grains, including whole wheat, oats, as well as legumes. So we know that we have a plethora of bacteria residing in our gut, and the exact number is about 38 trillion. And I feel really sorry for the guy who had to count each one individually. But we know that having different strains of bacteria can actually have or confer a certain health benefit. And having these types of bacteria in our gut can help reduce our risk factors for things like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and also help to strengthen our immune system. So if we can focus on some of those foods that are going to be nourishing for our gut, once again, we're going to be holding ourselves in really good stead for good health outcomes in the future.
Okay, so let's talk about the best diet that is out there, in your opinion, for most people. What is it?
Ricardo, it's got to be the Mediterranean diet. I don't think there's a better one on the market. So Mediterranean diet features things like extra virgin olive oil as the predominant fat source, plenty of legumes, so think lentils, chickpeas, beans, whole grains, fruit and vegetables. And actually it encourages people to have less reliance on things like dairy and meat, but it's really, once again, lauding those plant-based foods. But I think what the Mediterranean diet just gets right is just the ratio between carbohydrates and fats. And I think for so long we've been focusing on low fat, and now we're focusing on low carb. And you don't need to go low fat, you certainly don't need to go low carb. You just need to get that balance right. So having more of those hard, healthy fats in your diet, the ones from avocados, nuts, seeds, and certainly extra virgin olive oil, but also including some of those carbohydrate and fiber-rich foods, things like whole grains and legumes, will lead to better gut health and reducing some of those risk factors for disease later in life. And I think one of the other benefits of the Mediterranean diet that perhaps we don't focus enough on is actually there's some evidence to show that it can help boost our mood, but also our sleeping patterns as well. So as a new dad, I think that, proof is in the pudding there. I'm going to follow a Mediterranean diet because I laud the benefits of sleep.
But in the Mediterranean, right, I know when I'm lucky enough to holiday there, and those in the Mediterranean, they do eat a lot of salted, meats and processed meats, or your salamis and your prosciuttos. How does that kind of work in that diet, or is that not kind of classified as part of the Mediterranean diet?
Yeah, I wonder if it is sort of classified as part of the Mediterranean diet. I wonder if it's a very small component. And I think this is where we get into a little bit of trouble, where we focus on single foods or we focus on single nutrients. And I think we've got to look at the dietary pattern on the whole. And like I said at the very beginning, it's okay to include some of these sometimes foods in your diet. It's best just not to make them a regular thing. So, perhaps if there are some processed meats, don't have them every day. But if you'd like to enjoy them from time to time, maybe have them once or twice a week. But I think we've got to get those fundamentals right. And I think that's where some of those Mediterranean countries, people residing in those countries, get that balance right, where on the whole they're focusing on those rich plant-based options, the heart-healthy fats, as well as those lean protein sources. And yes, from time to time, they even enjoy a bit of a tipple, and perhaps they enjoy a little bit of processed meat.
Very final question, and we'll have to make it quick. If you could have just 5 things in your pantry, what would they be?
Okay, I would say canned legumes for one, eggs, whole milk, probably even put soy milk in there, and there's a lot of conjecture around soy, but there's benefits to soy for both men and women. And the 5th one, have I mentioned nuts? Definitely got to be nuts.
Right.
I've probably missed a whole few, and I've probably offended a few food groups, but yes.
Blame it on me. I told you you could only pick
fruit bowl and veggie crisper full, but I think you did specify pantry.
Okay, Joel, appreciate your time. Anyone listening on Spotify, you can follow Joel at @the_nutrition guy on Instagram. Joel, thank you very much, mate.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Cheers.
That's Joel Feren there, the nutrition guy. I'm not sure if we are going to be able to get onto superannuation, but we will try. There's been a lot of focus on superannuation over the past few weeks as some MPs debate whether or not to lift that super guarantee on time. They're talking about delaying it, which possibly means less money for your super. And then the deadline for early access to your super, that is looming. So let's see if I can get Deborah Kent online. She is the founder of Integra Financial Services and a financial planner. Deb, have I got you there?
Yes, can you see me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you. So that's the pleasure of live streaming. So we might see how we go there.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So there should be a camera button on there. I've got no director, and I can't throw to a commercial break like television.
My camera doesn't say it's muted.
That's all right. What we can do, we can take this as an audio anyway, so that's fine, Deb. So can we talk about superannuation? What is super and why should we care?
Absolutely. Superannuation is one of those, I guess, those things in your life that is going to be the biggest wealth for you outside of your family home. And a lot of people don't realise that. A lot of people are not engaged with super because they see it as something that comes out of their salary and they think it's not theirs, but it is. And it will be a very large amount of money for retirement. And we need to prepare for retirement because unfortunately these days, we can't rely on the age pension looking after us in retirement.
Right, Deb, just an idea. I wonder if your camera is facing the other way, if you need to switch it over to your side, because I'm getting some sort of colour or if the camera's being covered up in some way. That could be an idea. Oh, I'm getting something. I can see a wall. Deb?
Yes, that's my wall. So if I can get my camera to turn around, that's really weird. I've not had this problem before.
That's right. We can continue on. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. That's all right. So while we were talking about super, why can't you just rely on the pension?
Because the pension is not going to be enough. If you look at the pension these days, a single pensioner gets roughly about $800 a fortnight. I don't have the exact figures in my head, but if you think about what you need to do in retirement, as far as, you want to have a good life, if you want to go out and spend a bit of money and have a nice dinner out once a week, if you're on the pension, there's not a lot of room for that. And the other problem is that, if you wanted to take the odd holiday, people who live solely on the pension, they don't have a lot of money to do things to make their retirement life really nice. So it's, I just don't think people should rely on the pension.
Okay, so let's talk about the basics of superannuation. How do you build it? Because firstly, there's the superannuation guarantee. What's that exactly?
Okay, so the superannuation guarantee is an amount of money that your employer puts into super on your behalf. It's 9.5% currently of your gross annual salary. It goes into your super fund and accumulates over time. That's your superannuation guarantee. There are other ways, of course, of putting money into superannuation as well, which we can also talk about.
Of course, let's talk about those, because there are contributions you can make. You can do that before tax and after tax. So run us through those.
Yeah, so basically, if you want to put more money into superannuation, you can do that via what we call salary sacrifice. So you can go to your employer, and you can ask them to put extra money into your super via salary sacrifice. So what that does is the employer will take that money out of your pre-tax dollars. So in other words, if you earn $50,000 and you're going to put $1,000 into super, then they'll put the $1,000 into super, and then you're taxed on your $49,000 salary. Now, when the money goes into the super fund, it's taxed at 15 cents. So if you're on every dollar, so if you're on a tax rate of say 40%, you're actually going to save that bit of tax that you would normally pay on your salary, and you're getting the benefit of money going into super. It's a really, really good way to do it. But we need to be mindful that there is such a thing as a superannuation cap. Now, the superannuation cap currently is $25,000. So whatever your employer puts into super at 9.5%, plus what you put in as salary sacrifice, cannot go over $25,000 under the current rules.
Right. Okay. So how does one decide, right, whether it's worth making those super contributions rather than maybe paying off a mortgage?
So this is an interesting one, Rick. Paying off your mortgage is always going to be the right thing to do. Every financial advisor will definitely tell you that you need to get rid of debt. Getting rid of debt, especially before you retire, is a very, very good thing to do. Currently, we have interest rates in this country at very low rates. You can get some no-frills mortgages at, say, 2.5%, right? It's unheard of, the kind of interest rates we've got. So sometimes there may be that balance of, do I put the money into the mortgage, or do I put it into my super fund if my super fund's getting a reasonable performance? So if you look at performance now, obviously COVID has meant that we have a lot of super funds who have gone backwards. Pretty much we're in negative return area, but that's starting to build up. But on normal day, times, if we're looking at something like you're in super fund earning 7% and your mortgage is 2.5%, then maybe your dollar will work better for you in your super fund, if you can get where I'm coming from. So that dollar that goes to the super fund is going to earn 7.5%, where if you put it on the mortgage, yes, it's 2.5% you're going to save. However, the one thing that I would say is, if you look at that strategy, get advice, but and also that superannuation, you cannot access it until you reach a condition of release, which is around that 65 years of age. So you have to be very careful that if you're going to put money into the superannuation rather than your mortgage, remember, you can't access it.
You mentioned accessing super, so let's talk about that. What are the ways you can access superannuation, considering it is meant to be for retirement?
Yeah, look, superannuation, you can't really access it until you reach what we call a condition of release. So I'll just quickly go through those. So you can, when you turn 55, you can access your superannuation via what we call a pension. Now that pension is capped at 10% of whatever the balance of your fund is. that you may decide when you're getting to that stage where you're still working, you can take the pension, you can pop it back in as a contribution back into the super fund, and there's a really good strategy around that. It's called a transition to retirement. Other than that, and if you don't do that, you have to meet a condition at least, which is retirement or age 65. And that's where you can access your super. You can take it via a lump sum, or you can take a pension. Your super fund becomes tax-free at the age of 60. So they're the sorts of strategies you can use when you retire. Prior to that, you can't get access to your fund unless you decide to approach the ATO on hardship provisions. Now, hardship provisions are fairly strict. You have to be unemployed, you have to be on unemployment benefits, and you have to prove to the ATO that you need to access your super under hardship provisions. Currently, under COVID, there is early release, which you mentioned earlier. This is a one-off because of the pandemic. There has been 10,000 that you could take prior to the 30th of June, and there's another 10,000 you can take after the 30th of June, but you must qualify to do it. You can't just go in and take that super. You must qualify under the COVID rules.
Yeah, so you mentioned that early access to super. So I think I've got a chart here from APRA. These are the latest numbers. APRA is the banking regulator that says almost $16 billion in early super payments have been made, and more than 2 million applications have been made and paid. So that's quite a large number. Do you think the Australian Taxation Office will be keeping a very close eye on the validity of these claims, Deb?
Yes, I do think they will. I mean, there's not a lot come out at the moment about the ATO looking at the validity of these claims. However, I have seen some instances where they have checked up on the odd person that has done it. So you need to be very careful that you do qualify under the COVID rules to take this 10,000, because the last thing you want to do is have the ATO come back to you and either want the money back, or they may tax you on that money, because currently under COVID, you can take that $10,000 and it's tax-free, which it normally wouldn't be. So this is very much a one-off. So if they decide that you haven't put in a valid claim, they may tax that $10,000 that you've received. So you need to be very careful. You need to be honest, and you need to make sure, do I really need to access my super? Can I get through this crisis without it? Because accessing your super now for that $10,000 will cost you in the long run with the balance of your superannuation fund in retirement.
Right. And just finally, right, those who are watching and listening in their 30s and 40s, what's your message to those who are now starting to think about their future and superannuation?
My message is take note of your super. There's a lot of statistics out there that show that age bracket have no interest in their super. They just don't take an interest in it. And as I said earlier, it's one of the biggest forms of wealth that you will have outside your family home. So what my message is, take note of your super for the young ones. Make sure that you understand your super, what investment option that you're in. Most superannuation funds, when you go to your employer, they'll go into a default super fund with a default option, and that may not be right for you. So check out your investment options and make sure that you're in the right one. Don't forget, if you're in your 30s, you got a long time to go before you can access this money, so you can ride out ups and downs in the market. Make sure you check if you've got insurance in there, life insurance. If you have got life insurance, is it enough life insurance? Be very careful about moving super funds from one to the other. If you do have life insurance, you will lose that. So be very careful. And just take note of it. Understand it. Understand how they invest. Are they investing into sustainable investments, for instance, or are they investing in other types of investments that you would prefer not to? I mean, there's a lot of that happening at the moment, where a lot of young people are wanting to invest into sustainable investments for the future of the world, not only the money that they've got invested. So, be engaged. There's fabulous things around, Rick. You can go on to the MoneySmart website. You can have a look in there, and you can do some calculations. You can look at how superannuation funds, can accumulate over time. You can also, as I said, there's a lot of apps around, fabulous apps, where those apps will allow you to put extra money into super just by spending money. So it might round up the amount of money that you're spending. So you're spending $15.50, it might round it up to $16.50 goes into your super fund. What a great idea. Fabulous. And for that age bracket, apps are terrific. And there's a lot of them around. Go searching for them.
Deborah Kent, I think that's a good place to leave it. Thank you so much. A few technical difficulties, but we got the audio. We got to hear all that fantastic information. Deborah Kent, you can contact her at Twitter at Deborah Kent 10. Deb, thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry about the camera.
That's okay. Now, Deb did mention that MoneySmart website. It's actually a great tool. It's run by the Australian government, the Australian Securities and Investments Commission. The address is on your screen, www.moneysmart.gov.au. It's an excellent resource with information about superannuation, how you can find your lost super, and plenty more information on there. So that's moneysmart.gov.au. That is it for this stream. Don't forget that the information on this program is general in nature, and you should contact a licensed financial professional to make sure any decision or any financial decision that you make is the right one for you. A few technical difficulties. The irony is I can actually see Deb right now in terms of timing. Actually, I'll get you back on if you want to quickly say hello. Hold on 1 second. There you are. I've got you.
I figured it out.
That's the beauty.
I'm facing the wall. Sorry about that. But hello, everyone.
Right.
The photo was really nice, though. Thank you.
I managed to find it very quickly. Thank you, Dave. Until next time.
Thank you.
Technical difficulties, but I think that's one of the reasons why I love live television and live streams like this, because you get thrown some challenges and you've just got to deal with it. Your health and your wealth is all over social media. It's on Facebook. It's on LinkedIn, Twitter, Periscope, and YouTube. And of course, there'll be an audio stream of this on Spotify, which might sound pretty interesting given the technical difficulties we had today. Please share it and like it. Tell your friends. I'm Ricardo Gonçalves. I wish you very good health and wealth.